John Pfeiffer posee más de 30 años de experiencia asesorando a oficiales del gobierno de Estados Unidos en políticas presupuestales, legislación, regulación y administración en proyectos y programas de energía a gran escala. Ha trabajado en la Oficina de Administración y Presupuesto y en programas nacionales de administración, presupuesto y en iniciativas de reforma a la evaluación. Ha asesorado en estos mismos temas al gobierno de Filipinas y a oficinas de otros países y organismos internacionales. También cuenta con gran experiencia en la dirección de instituciones locales de educación y organizaciones cívicas.
The role of the Office of Management and Budget in reviewing spending and legislative proposals coming forth from the agency requires you to examine them, investigate them as closely as possible. Does this work? Will it work? We often turn for a variety of sources of information, but one of the first ones we think to ask about is whether or not there have been program evaluations established, conducted for this proposal. Well, there are a variety of stakeholders that are concerned about the effectiveness and efficiency of these programs. In addition to the staff of the OMB, there's the president and his senior advisors. There are the agency and program officials who are going to implement the program. There are members of Congress who oversee the program and pass legislation or provide funding for it. There are the interest groups that have a particular interest in whether this program is implemented and how it's implemented. And then there's the general public, the taxpayer, that is very concerned that their dollars are being spent wisely. You know, there are many sources of information that one can gather about a particular program or proposal. There might be M&E studies themselves, monitoring and evaluation studies themselves that the agency has undertaken to determine the effectiveness of the program. In addition, there are other government organizations. For example, the Congress has the Government Accountability Office that's often asked by members of Congress to evaluate a particular program. There are independent think tanks and interest groups throughout the country, a lot of them are headquartered in Washington, that do their own studies of program effectiveness and impact. So there are a variety of these sources of information available, many of them, throughout the country, and it's a job of somebody like myself to find out where they are and to tap them when questions come up about a particular initiative or program. You know, there are a number of factors that lead to the interest in this kind of information. When President Obama was inaugurated last January, for example, he said that one of his primary concerns was to provide a government that works. If you're going to have a government that works, you need to be able to hold programs accountable. You need M&E information to determine just what they're doing and how well they're doing it. And that concern of the President's works its way down to all the people that work for him. Like the head of my agency, the Office of Management and Budget, Peter Orzag, has made very clear that he wants to see requests for funding for new or existing programs to be based on performance information, evidence that they are doing well, that the money that the agency is asking the government to invest is going to be well spent. The new director, Peter Orzag of the Office of Management and Budget, is very interested in program evaluation and in program results information as a guide to making wise decisions on the allocation of resources to one program or another program opportunity. Established an initiative just this fall to encourage agencies to establish a rigorous program evaluation and monitoring system for all of their programs, and he's invited several of them to volunteer to pick selected programs for much more rigorous evaluation than has been done in the past, and to develop an internal evaluation capability among his staff to conduct this M&E work with much more rigor and professionalism and consistency than has been done in the past. He's asked the staff at OMB, when they are making budget recommendations to him for an agency's programs this year, to couch their analysis and recommendation in terms of performance information that's available for the program. What evidence do you have that this investment is going to be worthwhile, that this program is going to be able or has achieved the goals it set for itself effectively and efficiently. The OMB is in more of an oversight and a policy guidance role than the agencies that are actually implementing government service programs. So we're working often to support the development of M&E capacity in the agencies, to guide the agencies on how to develop an evaluation for a particular program by telling them what information we want to see them submit with their budget proposals. We're looking for special studies that come out of that kind of work. We're also looking for regular performance reports that the agency may produce internally from its management systems on how the program is being implemented. But over time, and I've worked, as I said earlier, through a number of administrations, I think leadership is crucially important. Leadership that demands monitoring and evaluation information. Set policy and program directions, maybe management issues to improve the program's operations or the kinds and quality and frequency of information that's produced. And one other point is that the agencies then need to, like I say, our agency has to use that information for decision-making purposes. I think one of the ways that this administration's efforts to promote better evaluation are likely to be most effective is the clear-cut statement by our director that he's going to use that information for decisions about allocation of resources to programs. In many cases, not enough effort has been made to see that the various stakeholders with an interest in a particular program or policy are made aware of the results of monitoring and evaluation studies that have been conducted. They put the study in a report, they put it on a shelf, and it's by and large ignored except for a few experts who have a particular interest in it. But you find there are many actors in the game who affect the direction of a program. And their actions, if you believe in the efficacy of monitoring and evaluation efforts, and I do, their actions need to be informed by the results of these studies. So many more efforts and more thoughtful efforts need to be made to determine how best to communicate the results of these efforts to those stakeholders in ways that they can find both informative and useful for their own purposes. One thing that's very important in seeing that M&E efforts work effectively is to introduce them at the very beginning of program planning and design. Too often, how to conduct monitoring and evaluation efforts is an afterthought. It may come months or years after the program's been developed. Too late to really have an effect on how well you can watch or monitor the program's activities, what kinds of information you should be collecting, how you can analyze it, how you could use it to help manage the program. Another thing that's very valuable is not to just impose these requirements on the program's administrators, but to engage them in a dialogue, a mutual dialogue of how best to implement these kinds of studies and monitoring efforts. It's very helpful to bring in outside experts. Many of our federal programs are quite complicated. Some of them have been around for quite some time and have been studied extensively in the past. There's a great deal of expertise abroad in the country that could be brought to bear on how to improve the quality of monitoring and evaluation efforts for a particular program. The Obama administration is quite new and is just beginning to outline its vision for how it's going to use M&E information in its program management policy development. But at first blush, it has demonstrated a very strong interest in building on the efforts that have been conducted in the past and taking them in new and even more effective directions in terms of improving the quality of government services to the public. They have said, like I say, very clearly in guidance to the agencies that they're going to be using M&E information for budget decisions. They are looking for ways to improve the capacity of the agencies to conduct M&E studies. They are looking to ensure that M&E plans are included in the initial planning stages for new programs, and that older programs that are not working effectively have rigorous M&E efforts attached to them. One more thing is that they intend to work very closely with with agency councils, with M&E experts from within the agencies across the federal government on a regular basis to talk about common problems, to undertake initiatives addressing issues that they may have in common, to identify best practices. They're also going to use the internet and other communications devices extensively, much more extensively than the past, to make the results of M&E activities more visible, more accessible, more usable by the stakeholders with interest in them, and to promote good practice and awareness of the availability of this information to help guide the future of federal programs. You know, the prior administration, the Bush administration, gained a great deal of attention for its PART initiative, the Program Assessment Rating Tool. It was applied to every program in the federal government, and elaborate scorecards were prepared and publicized, demonstrating or summarizing the effectiveness of these federal programs. Many other countries became very aware of this effort and very interested in it, and have modeled some of their own M&E efforts after that. The new administration is not going to do away with the PART, but it's going to build on that experience. In contrast to the PART, which took sort of a snapshot of the program's performance at a particular point in time and gave it an effective or ineffective rating, the Obama administration is much more interested in assessing programmatic trends over time, performance of a program over time, in developing more in-depth analyses of the meanings of these trends, and based on those analyses are intended to help improve program performance. And then finally, they're interested in both using that information for decision making on a much more consistent basis than has been done in the past to its stakeholders. And in part, that's going to be based on asking the stakeholders what kinds of information would be most useful to you, in what kinds of format and shape would you find would be most accessible or helpful to you in your oversight of these programs.